think you should.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Whoscussion. We're your hosts from Whānau, ThatRandomGuy, and the audible, pleasurable Harriet Skelly.
It's your boy.
This week for part A, we're going to be covering Terror of the Vervoids, or something else, and the Ultimate Foe. But as we've already done the Ultimate Foe before, this is going to be more of a discussion as season 23 as a whole. For part B, we're going to be covering Phobos and Twilight's End. Phobos being a 8th Doctor trip, well not short trip, a 8th Doctor adventure with Lucy Bleedin Miller. And Twilight's End is, I want to say a short trip, but it's almost like a full episode with the 7th Doctor. So, Terror of the Vervoids. I'll do the first half, Harry Skelly's going to do the last half, and then we're going to talk about season 23. So at the beginning, the Doctor is summoned by an SOS to a cruise ship that's heading from one side of the Milky Way to the other, going back to Earth. So we're obviously before Earth's fallen, and we're also before Ravelox happened. So the High Council's, they're having a good time here. The Doctor turns up and he's like, "Hey, I've been sent an SOS. What's going on here?" They get captured by some guards, very, very Troughton era, captured by guards and taken to the leader. And the leader actually, yeah, it's totally Troughton, which is great because Six travel with Troughton for a bit. Also, the Doctor knows the leader, a Commander... Oh, Commodore. He's just called Commodore. That's fantastic.
Yes.
I thought he had a name. Anyway, Commodore, played by Michael Craig.
The Doctor was like, Captain. And he's like, it's Commodore now.
Yeah, and that's it.
That's it. Like, didn't give him the actual name. Like, I know you, and you were a captain before, but now you're a Commodore.
Cool. Commodore. Now, the Commodore goes, "Oh no, why are you here?" So the Commodore knows that the Doctor is not the greatest thing to have around. He's like, "Wherever you go, Doctor, there's death. And don't worry, we're not going to Russell T Davies that fact." So the Doctor's
he's like a space pigeon.
Yeah.
Like, he's really unlucky if you have him on board your ship.
He is like a space pigeon. So the Doctor's like, "Well, I've been here to maybe investigate something." And the new companion Mel, who we've been introduced into in this story, as she's been traveling with the Doctor for some time. So the Doctor in the courtroom, which has been taking place over the entirety of season 23B, has gone into the Matrix to have himself a bit of a cry. But he's the 6th Doctor, so he probably had himself a bit of a blast you Perry, and that was it. And he's gone ahead and fished out a story from his possible future.
Well,
because he mayn't have one, but he's pretty certain he gets out of this conundrum. I honestly think that was him going, "I'm going to get out of this," by grabbing a story from his future.
Yeah, pretty much. Basically, he's saying, "Hey, I'm getting out of this. Here's the proof.
Yeah.
Here's the story." Ha!
There's the proof in the pudding. So he shows a future adventure with a companion that the Doctor inside the Matrix retelling has been traveling with for a long time. I see Mel as the younger sister in this TARDIS relationship. But there are times where Six is the younger brother. It's very interesting. The dynamic is very sibling orientated. At least that's the vibe I got from the story. I quite like Mel, but she screams a bit too much. It's really weird because she's not a scaredy cat, so I don't understand the screaming.
She's just got that pitch of voice.
Yeah,
which kind of gets a little grating, but otherwise she's a very headstrong companion.
Jonathan Nathan Turner is like, "I need a strong woman and I need one fast." And
find me a strong woman. Get one here right now.
Right now.
Hey, we can't use Perry anymore.
She did. So
no,
Well, yes, actually. So Mel's with the Doctor. They've been together for a while, but the thing is because this is a story where we're being introduced to the companion, even though in the context of the continuity she's been around for a long time, there are bits and pieces of dialogue where the Doctor's like, hey, remember this adventure? Or hey, remember this character trait you have and I've always known you had it?
It's pretty great.
Yeah, it's pretty great. Like her, the fact she's got, okay, fiction calls it photographic memory, but there's an actual real term for it. Eidetic
memory. It's not technically a real thing, but you know.
But there are people that have it though, that can remember like crazy details, like what happened on their 7th birthday when they're like 60.
Yeah, there are people who have got good memory and who memorize things very well, but it's not necessarily true that you can remember like every single frame of life you've ever had.
Yeah,
like that's not a thing. But that's what people seem to think it is when they think about photographic memory.
Yeah, that's why I really hate when they call it that, because it's not photographic memory, and that's why the actual term isn't photographic memory.
Yeah, exactly.
It's very good recall.
Yeah. And she's kind of like Sherlock in that sort of like she like notices things and like keeps them in her mind. That's the sort of deal. But also the Doctor does that as well. So he's finally brought someone along who shares that ability.
I feel like he's brought someone along where he can bounce back he's right.
Yeah, pretty much.
He's like, hey, you figured it out too, right? Yeah, I figured it out. Awesome. We're both awesome.
We're awesome. Pretty much.
It's great because that feeds into the 6th Doctor as a character as well. Very, very, very boisterous.
Feeds into his ego fantastically.
Yeah, it's so fantastically. And I love Six's ego. It's like, it's funny because like usually a character like him I wouldn't like, but there's something about the writing and the performance of Colin Baker that just nails this character.
Absolutely.
But early in the story, the story inside the Matrix that's being retold, an old elderly gentleman bumps into a fella and he goes, hey, you're that guy. And the guy goes, no, I'm not. I'm someone else. And
someone else entirely.
And the old guy goes, I don't believe that for a lickety-split second. And so that guy disappears from the story entirely after that little skerfuffle. And the Doctor and Mel are like, hey, let's go find out some stuff. So they go to the cabin of this person, cabin 6, and they're like, hey, there's these seeds and other things, and the place has been turned over. So they're like to the Commodore, hey, we think some bad shenanigans is going on. And the Commodore is like, is this Murder on the Orient Express? The story then turns into Murder on the Orient Express for a little bit.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, a little bit. Not entirely, because the last half is like this one complete like 180. It's crazy.
Yeah.
But like not in a bad way. It's weird. It's like these two separate stories that happen to be connected because the Doctor's there. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
So Mel and the Doctor figure out that there's some illegal plant life on the ship. The illegal plant life may or may not be killing everybody. There is a security guard he's like a wimp that thinks he's not a wimp is the best way I can describe this guy. Do you think that's an apt description, Harriet Skelly?
Yeah, I guess.
Sounds about right. And he's at odds with the Doctor walking around a ship thinking he owns the joint. We've got these peoples. I can't remember what they were called. Peoples? They were. And what was the name of the alien race? The something or others. Hang on, TARDIS Wiki should help me out here.
Yes.
Featuring the Mulgarians. They're listed as an enemy, which makes, I suppose it makes a bit of sense. But basically, we're at the halfway point here. Mel and the Doctor have discovered a body inside a trash can. That's got some pretty good 80s aesthetic, to be honest. Yeah.
She's not really in a trash can. She's like in like a stasis pod, kind of like the bed like turns into a stasis pod.
Oh, I see. Well, she's had better days. She's kind of been parried.
Yeah. It kind of looks like her brain is like forming out the side of her skull.
Yeah.
Her eyes, like that's what it seems like.
It's fantastic.
That's what it looks like. It's actually really great. Like it kind of looks like it's a mix between like early CG but also like some prosthetic went on is there as well.
Yeah.
It's pretty good.
And I think you're right there with the early CG inclusion, because later on in the story there is that CGI, very, very early CGI used as an on-screen effect.
Oh, you get the black hole.
Yeah. Which was
hole.
like, that was amazing. I was like, whoa. And like, because I had forgotten that CG had started coming into sci-fi by this time, because a couple of years later we'd get Next Generation with Star Trek, which would have very, very, very early CGI in it. So with that out of the way, guys, we're going to jump into the second half with Harriet Shelley.
All right. So after that, basically that's when everything gets switched up to 12th gear.
Extreme JMT.
Yeah, ball fondlers, that sort of stuff. Anyway, so after they find this lady who's turning into some weird creature thing, they basically from that point on just like turn everything up to 11. Start going crazy. The Doctor pulls the fire alarm to do some reconnaissance. Basically, gets into a bit of trouble. Eventually, there's like a bit of a tussle in the like cafeteria area.
Yeah.
Where the
Mogarians?
Yeah. They're trying to find out what's going on. They're not really enemies in this, or at least not in the beginning. They're not enemies until basically this point where we're pretty much at the end of the third episode of this. That's when they become enemies. So they're not enemies.
They're really just fed up with everyone's crap more than they are enemies.
Pretty much, yeah. They're like, but they get painted as sort of like eco-terrorists, basically, in this, which is kind of, I guess, on the money. But it's still a bit weird. But anyway, so they go in. They're in the cafeteria. They're doing some dialogue stuff, basically, and then they go sit down. One gets brought a drink and dies. And the Doctor's like, get the mask off of them. And everyone is like, oh my God, don't take his mask off. He's a Bulgarian. He'll die if you do that. No, he's human. And it's like, what? And then they cut to the council. Council are like, what are you talking about, Doctor? How did you know that? And he's like, because eidetic memory stuff.
And that's exactly basically what he says, almost verbatim.
Yeah, he's just like, this is why if the rail yard would stop interrupting, maybe we'd get somewhere, basically. So yeah, they follow around for this a little bit. Like that's when the Doctor finally gets like properly like allowed to operate normally with the captain's not the captain,
the Commodore.
The word Commodore. He finally gets Commodore's allowance to do whatever he wants, basically.
Which is funny.
So they run around.
Pretty much actually gave it to begin with, like almost.
Yeah, he pretty much did, but he legitimately like told him that he's allowed to do whatever he wants now. So they go around like trying to find out what the deal is, because the human that was acting as a Megarian is actually the guy that was supposedly killed earlier on, but has actually been hiding as a Megarian because he knew his cover was blown when that old guy was like, hey, it's you.
And I love it, that old guy tells like everybody. He's like, hey, did you know that guy there's pretending to be someone else?
Yeah, it's pretty great. It's like immediately blows his cover. It's like, wow, that's to have your cover blown as a spy by like just some random old guy. That's gotta be the worst. Like it has to be the worst. That some old guy thinks he's being cool by like trying to like talk to you, and he doesn't even really know you. He's just met you one time. And he comes in, he's like, hey, it's you. And he's like, oh my cover, I'm gonna die now.
I love how ragey he gets as well. He's like, I'm not that guy, god damn it.
Yeah, but it's too late. You're done for. So anyway, he finally gets killed, obviously. And we find out through a string of dialogue with the Doctor, like tracking down someone who's like got something. I think it was the seeds. Yeah. Someone had something of him. No, he had a tape. The Doctor finally finds the guy with the tape, and the guy like gives his full dialogue as to why he was doing it, why he was so crazy, basically, and then it's basically like, okay, I'll give you the tape, but put down the gun. Doctor puts down the gun. He throws in the tape, and then the doctor, he was like, okay, the stakes are turned now, Doctor. I've got the gun. You've got a blank tape. Ha! And then he takes him off to try and like tell on him to the Commodore. And then the Doctor's like, well, you see, I'd already taken the Commodore into my confidence, so you're wrecked now. And he's like, oh.
I love when they walk out and the Commodore and his guards are standing right there, and he's like, man, this sucks. Like,
it's pretty great. It's pretty great. Like he really stepped into that one, and the Doctor set it up perfectly. But yeah, so it's at this point that the Mogarian stuff comes into play, where the like second in command or like security officer, I guess.
Yeah, the guy everybody craps on all the time.
Yeah, Lieutenant Worf of the ship, I guess. Anyway, or Yar, one of them. Anyway, he has actually basically been paid off to help the Mogarians take over the ship in their attempts to get back at the humans for plundering their entire planet, basically. So
fair enough.
That's all going on. But in the meantime, the main point that's been flowing from the beginning with the main villain of this is that there's a bunch of scientists on board. They had genetically like brought back they brought back some pods that contained a genetically manipulated plant life form that it acts like a full-on like human being-esque thing, but they're still very instinctual to the point where they realize that humans and all living organisms will at some point eat plants, and they basically see that as an affront to them in all shapes and forms. So they want to basically put out. They want to stun everybody and basically put them in a little pile to compost. Yeah, it's probably the weirdest. Like,
I love when they find that pile of corpses, and Belle's like, "What is it, Doctor?" And he's like, "Oh, I think it's a compost heap." And she's like, "That's barbaric." And he's like, yeah. "Well, I mean, we do it to them."
Yeah, that's how we feed them. Like, you know, it's reasonable, right? Yeah, it's pretty great. So then, eventually, they figure out that they're going to have to kill these aliens after the Mogarians get themselves a bit wrecked by them already. So they've basically taken back control of the ship by this point, by the end of this episode. So the Mogarian takeover of the ship was really short-lived, within 10 minutes.
Yeah, it's about 10 minutes.
Yeah, 10 minutes of them hijacking the ship, and then they're dead, and it's over for them basically. It's pretty sad, really, when you think about it.
As soon as they die, the Doctor goes, "Take off their masks."
Yeah, show them to the security chief. Show them that he's kind of done for at this point. It's pretty great. So yeah, they trick the plants into thinking that they've turned off all the power, and the power's low, so that the plants stop. So the plants go back to their little hidey hole that they come from, where they can get their energy. Because obviously that's what plants instinctually do as well, is they try to get to a light source. That's why you see, if you ever look properly from the bottom of a tree, you'll notice that there's never really ever naturally there's never any leaves that cross over each other. It's so that each and every single one of them always gets the same amount of light. It's pretty amazing that instinctually they do that. There's also some plants that also follow the sun in the sky as it moves. It's pretty great. So they've instinctually moved away from where there's no light, so they can get to the light and feed. And the Doctor's waiting for them there, where he uses some sciencey stuff to basically trick them into going through their entire life cycle, which is all the way into winter, where normally plants would wither and kind of die, but more go into a stasis. But instead, he's done it to a point where it kills them. And there it is. He admitted to genociding a whole alien race in front of the council.
Yeah.
And then we go on to the next episode. Yeah.
I love how the Valeyard's he just admitted to genocide. The Doctor looks around and he's like, "Oh crap, yeah, I kind of did, didn't I?"
You're right. Yeah, but I saved all of humanity and all other living creatures in the universe. Genocide.
He's like, hey, they would have evolved to be like those things from Frontios, the bug things that would catapult their eggs to other planets. Like that.
They would have evolved to be worse than the Daleks.
Yeah.
Because,
whoa, actually. They would have been able to kill Daleks as well.
They probably would have been, actually, if they'd gotten to that point.
Because they just like put their vines inside the colored casing and it'd be over.
Yeah. So, and they'd want to kill the Time Lords as well. Like, come on.
Yeah.
Time Lords.
Hey, wasn't there a plant life? Oh, Planet Kimball. The plants that turn you into plants.
But they were Dalek creations. They were
they were genetic ones. The Vargas plant. That's right. That's what they were called. Man, imagine Time Lords being turned into that. That'd be yuck.
That would,
because you'd regenerate and it would just keep growing.
Oh.
But yeah, so the Doctor has actually put his foot into it this time. Now, because we've already done the Ultimate Foe before, I'm going to just do a quick recap. Basically, the Master turns up and goes, hey, everybody, the High Council's been using you guys, and the Valeyards put something into effect to dissolve the Council. Because he didn't trust them to keep their end of the bargain and give them the Doctor's lives. The Valeyard runs away into the Matrix. The Doctor chases after him, goes into the Matrix. The Valeyard tries to kill the Doctor with the Matrix. The Doctor's like, okay, since you're me from the future, you know I know how to control the Matrix.
Yeah, since you're me from the future, why are you so dumb?
Yeah.
Like...
So the Master turned up just so that he could have the Valeyard either take out the Doctor or the Doctor take out the Valeyard, because he's like, if there's two of them, I'm pretty screwed, and I want to continue being evil.
Yeah, pretty much.
Zavalon Glips turns up as well. Oh, sorry, you first, Hercules?
Yeah, he's sort of like, his main sort of deal here is he knows that the Valeyard is the evil Doctor, and he knows that if he has to face an evil Doctor, he'll straight up die.
Yeah, he would, because
an evil Doctor would straight up kill him.
Yeah.
Like, he wouldn't like hesitate at all.
It would be absolutely 100% over. So the Master's like, I'm gonna get those two to fight in the Matrix, because that would be bad news for me. Zabalon Glips turns up and he's like, I'm Zabalon Glitz, and basically says that the whole story. It's great. I love Zabalon.
He actually does. He
like,
does say that all
he's like, I'm Zabalon Glips. You get many grotzits for this. Oh, look at this. He is my favorite video game NPC. He just has.
He is. Yeah.
He has a dialogue tree, which he's got scripts in the background that run these lines of dialogue that he says throughout gameplay. That's
every single time someone asks him something, like any question, it is always prefaced with, I'm Zabalon Glitz. Of course I'm going to do that.
Yeah, I'm going to do this because I'm Zabalon Glitz and not because of any other reason. Zabalon Glitz. So Zabalon Glitz is having a great time. And the Master's like, hey, I'll give you all this gold if you do stuff with me. He's like, cool. I think this is trippier than the last time he was in here on screen in the Deadly Assassin. What are your thoughts? Do you reckon the Deadly Assassin was trippier?
No, this is definitely trippier, because there's like a bunch of different things going on compared to just him being Rambo.
Like, just compared to being Rambo and fighting a samurai or a scary clown. So yeah, they're in this like Victorian era sort of industrial zone and a carnival, and there's like off-screen children laughing and chanting and stuff. It's actually real creepy and really atmospheric. I really enjoyed what the Valeyard's done with his little space in the Matrix. And the Valeyard's like, I'm a watcher that the High Council made, and I want to have regenerations. And the Doctor's like, yeah, legit, man, that's not really your role. So I'm going to kill you. That's pretty much how this is going to go.
That's pretty much how it did.
Pretty much how it does. The Valeyard's splintered himself into these things called Pipple Bottles. Pipples? Mr. Popplewick? Mr. Popplewick.
Yeah.
And Mr. Popplewick's like, he reminds me of Cyril, the adult child from the toy maker. So he made me feel uncomfortable.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And he's like, you think the Deadly Assassin was trippy? You ain't seen nothing yet. So he's got explosive quills. The Doctor, Zebulon Glips, Mel, and the Master are trying to do things to try and stop the Valeyard. The Master and Zebulon Glips end up getting, I suppose, flung off into a Matrix version of the Vortex. And they look like they're getting compressed as well. And Zebulon Glips is like, what's happening? And the Master's like, I'm not entirely sure. But the last time I was in the TARDIS, a dinosaur was growing. So there's that.
Yeah, pretty much.
So
basically he's like, we're blasting off again.
Yeah, exactly. That was so the Team Rocket of this group. Like Jesse and Meowth were merged together to make the Master, and Zebulon Glips is Jesse.
Yeah.
And the Doctor ends up admitting defeat in front of the council. Turns out the whole time he knew it was a fake council. Mel tries to save him, and the Doctor's like, Mel, why did you try to save me? If you didn't do that, I could have killed the Valeyard. And she's like, oh, I didn't realize. He's like, I know. That was the whole point. No one was supposed to realize. I already knew what was going on. The Doctor finds out that the Valeyard's planning to destroy everything inside the Matrix. And the Doctor's like, I'm fully not going to let that happen. The Doctor thinks that he's defeated the Valeyard, but it turns out the Valeyard escaped the Matrix and has taken over role as the keeper of the Matrix. And the Doctor's like, well, we defeated the Valeyard. He's gone now. Gallifrey might be in disarray. And they're like, the Inquisitor's like, hey, you want to become the president? The Doctor's like, can you become the president?
No, I don't want to become the president.
Yeah,
you become.
Like, you become the president.
At some point, Romana becomes the president.
Yeah, exactly. And what's really great about this is in Gallifrey, the Big Finish series, the Inquisitor is Madam President.
Hell yeah.
So it's really, really cool. And that is the end of that. Now, I just want to have a quick discussion about the Valeyard. Now, going over the story again, the Master does say between your 12th and final incarnation.
Yes, he does.
Okay, so, I mean, now that Moffat, because he's Moffat, has given the Doctor another cycle, does that mean the Valeyard is before the 24th Doctor?
No, what I think is the case is that the Master thought that the 13th he still thinks that there's only 13 regenerations, especially considering he's already used up his, and he doesn't assume at the time that the Time Lords would give the Doctor any more regeneration.
Yeah, especially since he's a renegade.
Yeah, especially because he's a renegade. So I think the reason that we can sum that up to saying that the Master thinks that he'll only have 13 regenerations, but knows that this Watcher comes from between 12 and 13. So what I think is he comes from when Matt gets given his
new cycle of
regenerations.
Oh my god.
That's when they pull it out from him.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Oh my god, that's when they pull it out from him.
Yeah, and that's why 12 is like 11 and 12 have like this thing, especially considering 11 had that segment where with the Dream Lord being the evil side of him. I'm pretty sure that like 11 knew and was kind of also accepting his own death because he was like, I'm going to stop the Valeyard from being a thing. And then Clara talks them into giving him more generations, and he's like, oh no.
Yeah, the Valeyard's a thing. That's great. Thanks, Clara. Well done. You just unleashed possibly the worst thing that ever happened to the universe, an evil me.
Yeah, pretty much.
The guy who can outthink every villain is now the villain.
Yeah.
So, that's fantastic. I think that really works when he's given his new cycle.
I mean, it would also have been way better if they just didn't give him an additional cycle, but hey,
Yeah, I know, right? It's almost like we could have had the Theta Sigma die, and then a Time Lady just took over, and there were 13 Time Ladies. That way, if Jodie Whittaker's run doesn't do so well in the ratings, BBC can't cry and then turn her back into a man.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, that's great, eh? Because I honestly am really worried that will happen. And I'm like, your ratings aren't good. It's like, yeah, but people don't watch TV anymore.
Yeah.
It's not because she sucks.
That's absolutely what's going to happen.
They'll get scared and turn it back into a man, but it'll be a black man.
Well, that would be great, actually.
Yeah, Idris Elba as the Doctor.
I still think that Whittaker should get at least 2 seasons as the Doctor.
Oh
so
man!
If they try to like get sad about it and only give her 1, like an Eccleston, then please no.
Yeah,
please
don't do that. It won't be because of her. It'll be because times have changed. Right?
Yes, and if there is poor ratings, the reason is not because of her at all. It's not just because the times have changed and people don't watch TV anymore. It's also because there's still plenty of people on this world who are somehow opposed to the idea of us moving forward as a species. Don't know why that is, but there are still people like that.
Modern Luddites.
What BBC should be trying to do instead of bowing to the whims of those people, they should be just being like, no, harden up.
Yeah, harden up. You're a female Doctor now. Just roll with it. That's why, I really, really had hoped that we would get, the end of Peter's run would be him taking on the Valeyard. Which, I mean, obviously, and that's a fan dream. Obviously, it would never happen because Matt Moffat would never know how to write that.
No.
But, oh my god. Could you imagine if one actually sees the Valeyard come into existence?
Oh, wow, that would
that'd be so cool. And then we have Theta die and then Susan come along. But as we know that the Christmas special takes place when Polly and Ben are the companions, that's not going to happen.
Yeah. I mean, it's still always possible.
I'm really looking forward to seeing Ben and Polly.
If the last scene, the last few words that come out of one's mouth before we leave the 12th again, and he regenerates into Whittaker. If the last few words out of his mouth are not, I told her I would come back, that better be what he says to 12. Because he better have a conversation with him when he realizes that it's future him and be like, hey, did I ever go back and get Susan?
Yeah, and
so
then we
he better say, so he better say, hey, I told her I would go back. What are you doing?
That'd be so cool. But legit, what happened when 8 did go back wasn't so great.
Yeah, pretty much. So he probably won't admit to that.
Oh yeah, I killed his son. I mean, bye. Go turn into Patrick Troughton. Who's Patrick Troughton? Shh. Bye.
Go turn into the flute guy.
Yeah. I really hope they don't have Robert Sherman play him this time because he doesn't look anything like Patrick Troughton. But
that was season 23.
That was season 23.
That was a good time.
I thoroughly enjoyed it. What's your opinion of season 23 as a whole, since it was meant to be one story and it was aired as one story?
I feel like some of it was kind of jumping the shark, especially the kind of goal of jumping straight into having a new companion and having it seemed like she'd been around for a while as well. It seems a bit weird.
Yeah,
that they went with all of that. But I can understand where they were coming from with the whole idea, and it makes sense. But it's also sort of, it feels like, because this is that this is Doctor Who being on trial, basically. Is them,
yeah, that was the whole thing.
Yeah, it's them basically trying to jump the shark for their show, which does, I guess, kind of work out for them, I guess, but not really at the same time. But it's also, it feels like too much, that they are trying to force something that isn't there.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm glad that they did, because otherwise we might not have as great of a show as we do now. So it's important that this went on, but
because Doctor Who would have died the year beforehand if it didn't.
Yeah, it shouldn't have been necessary though, because I don't know, there's a lot of factors when it comes down to it. I really wish that they had never been even close to being cancelled for any reason, but it's also not. It's not just because there's some conservatives at the time that didn't want it to happen. It is also because sometimes they did go a little over the top.
Yeah, sometimes they did go too far.
Yeah, and it's not as even for in today's standards, a lot of the stuff that they did would only be okay on Netflix. That's
Yeah.
it. You know, only Netflix can do that anymore.
So much of 6 it would only be okay on Netflix.
So that's where that's where you get the problem, is that if we suddenly, like, if we go back in time, we stop Mary Warehouse from trying to cause any trouble, then we just
the Inquisitor, right?
Yeah, the Inquisitor. Then we get a whole lot of we just end up getting a terribly, like, what's the word? We get a terribly violent show casting just like immediately after. We're just like, Sci-Fi just turns into just like a cluster mess of Netflix level writing. And I'm not saying that would be a bad thing. I just feel like a lot of children would have have some serious warped sensibilities if that was the case.
Yeah, and I think that was the biggest problem is, and I can see why there was a lot of flack against JNT. I wouldn't have done what people were doing though when they were attacking his person, but I can see why people were a bit uppity with JNT, because he was pushing the boundaries. The thing is though, is that if this was the 90s, it would have just flown. It would have been okay, because the 90s was a crazy time to be a television series. Like, seriously, like things like Renegade, Viper, those shows were pretty violent and they were like primetime slots.
Well, the thing is that it's just if you'd had the Torchwood of the time, basically, if you'd gone and done a spin-off with Sebulon Glitz being the rebel space lord, like basically like a Han Solo on TV sort of deal.
Oh yes, please.
Then it would have been okay for him to like have that outlet there, and they could have put it on later at night, and Mary Whithouse wouldn't have had it go, and then we would still have a good series. It wouldn't have got ruined.
I agree with you there. I think that's kind of what Sarah Jane Smith's show was supposed to be.
Well, it just became more of a. I guess it kind of would have been, Sarah Jane.
Yeah, because Sarah Jane Smith's show was like, that was pretty violent. The pilot.
It was, but it was too early. Basically, it was too early.
Yeah, it was ahead of its time, and unfortunately the wrong way. Yeah,
it should have been about now, and Sebulon Glitz would have been the perfect person to pull that. Actually, I think. I mean, I guess he probably didn't get rated very favorably, being the kind of egotistical person that he was. But I don't know. There's a lot of could haves and would haves sort of deal when it comes to Doctor Who.
Yeah.
And we can dream as much as we like, but until we've got the ability to travel between alternate dimensions, we're probably never going to find out what exactly would have happened if those were the things.
Yeah, I agree. I kind of think if JNT hadn't pulled his punches, we would have had Colin for a little while longer as well. Because as we know, Colin, this is his last adventure on screen. And Big Finish had to end up stepping in to fill the gaps. Unfortunately, we won't be covering the last adventure featuring the Sixth Doctor, because heaps of it apparently features his monthly range companions, and we haven't done a monthly range, I don't think, except for 8. Yeah, 8's the only monthly range we've done. I don't think we haven't done anything outside of 8. The monthly range is fantastic, and I'm looking forward to when we finally do pick that up, because it is really great. But we haven't, as a team, as a collective, as a vervoid species, gone ahead and gone over that. With that, guys, we're going to wrap up part A. I'd like to hear what your thoughts are. Tell me what you'd think had happened if JNT's spin-off had actually worked, and the violent stuff was in the spin-off, and Doctor Who was turned back into a family show.
Yeah.